Preston Davis, and I'm really pleased to be hosting a meetup here with some of the folks who are going to be teaching in the GCAS Psychoanalysis certificate program. And it's really nice to have everyone here. Now, not everyone who is teaching in the certificate program is with us, but Mary Wild, for example, is here, Julie Reshe, Dr. Kevin Boileau, Dr. Daniel Tutt, and I should say Dr. Julie Reshe. And then we also have some alum who went through the program last year, Michael, who's in Denver, and Simone, who's in Canada. So welcome, and thanks for joining us. We hope that you will find our certificate program of interest. I know that we have recruited some really good practitioners and theorists, including Bruce Fink, who's going to be teaching for us in person in Paris, but you can tune in through the Zoom. That'll be in May. But Jamieson Webster is going to kick all our courses off starting in a few weeks in November with her course on psychoanalysis and philosophy in the body. So that's great. And then we'll have Julie Reshe's course coming up in December, Mary Wild's course in January, Daniel Tutt's course in February. And so we have a full set of classes this year. So, and I'd just like to welcome you all. Don't forget to sign up now. You can still save some money by signing up before November. You can also apply for financial assistance. So, well, welcome. And let's kick this off with the co-director, Dr. Kevin Boileau, who is coming to us from California. Hey, Kevin, how are you?
Thank you, Preston, very much. Good morning, good afternoon. I currently chair the Department of Philosophy and Psychoanalysis at GCAS. And so I take a deeply theoretical perspective on teaching psychoanalysis. I can tell you that what I learned about 20 years ago was that we had to think about psychoanalysis in new ways. And so we years ago built a program that it tried to integrate critical theory, phenomenology with classical psychoanalysis, try to create a rapprochement with the neuropsychoanalysts, and then the logicians in set theory and category theory. So there's a really expansive kernel and constellation of discourses in psychoanalysis that ranges from really difficult mathematics to phenomenology to I think new ideas and new paradigms in psychoanalysis. And so what I've been able to notice all over the world is that psychoanalysis is actually very fragmented right now. There are a lot of different schools from all over the world, which is actually a really wonderful thing. And what that means is that we've kind of opened up the discourse, so to speak. So I think there's a lot of room for really new thinking. I think psychoanalysis is actually a super important discourse. I've been working with others to try to develop programs for grade school teachers in psychoanalysis. I think is very important. So in terms of my class or classes that I'm going to teach in our certificate program, my approach is usually to start from a philosophy of mind or a conversation about metapsychology, and then look at a comparative, using a comparative approach to look at the different schools of psychoanalysis, instead of getting overly committed to one paradigm. And so that can actually be a little unsettling, but it also opens up new avenues. I think I want to say a rhizomatic way. I think that's actually the right word. And so given where we are in the world today, with all the crises that we're facing, I think the human anthropology will necessarily change. It's a really big open question right now. And as we change our conception of who we are philosophically and our relationship to the rest of the world, we're going to see huge opportunities for psychoanalytic thinking. And so just to kind of finish this up for myself, psychoanalysis is not only theoretical and academic, it's highly clinical. But I think there's there's actually a whole new field of applied psychoanalysis. So, for example, we've been developing algorithms and software to use psychoanalysis in conflict resolution work, nonviolent approaches to conflict, which I think is really important. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited. I think it's a great program. Thank you, Creston, very much for being here today.
Well, thank you, Dr. Boileau. It's great to have you, and thanks for that overview. It's really exciting. We'll go from California with Dr. Boileau to Professor Dr. Julie Reshe.
Visiting professor at University College Cork and University College Dublin, and I'm also director of Institute of Psychoanalysis at GCAS. And I have my own take on what is psychoanalysis and of pedagogy of psychoanalysis. I actually think that psychoanalysis is something that one cannot teach because in comparison to practically as a practice, clinical practice, and as a theory, because in comparison to other theories, in comparison to other psychotherapeutic ways, practices, it's not a place of knowledge, in my view. It's not a knowledge that can be just transferred as something you have. It's rather, for me, it's a disruption of a knowledge. It's kind of a glitch. It's not useful in a way. It's rather something useless, something that disrupts, questions other theories, or at least functions in a different disruptive way, not useful way. And this preserving the space of uselessness and of disruption, for me, is the function of psychoanalysis, the way I see it, the negative side of psychoanalysis. So, of course, there is the other side, the positive side, which psychoanalysis tries to be useful, tries to compete with the knowledge that it has, knowledge that it transfers. But the thing that I love in psychoanalysis, that it's in opposition to all of that, the place of disruption, the place of even despair, of not knowing, not understanding, especially traditional, conventional psychoanalysis, the way it functions in contemporary society, like it lacks scientific basis. We try to add it to psychoanalysis, but it's something there that resists it. So this is for me, and you can't transfer it. You kind of, what you can do is you can do it together. You can glitch together. The thing that I love about it. And the course that I'm going to teach in December, called Negative Society, Love in Times of Despair. So we're going to glitch together on the topic of negative society. And I will try to elaborate the idea of a negative core of society and negative core of love, both social love, political love, and romantic love. Like, see it as not something that is even present, but this empty place that at the same time connects and disconnects us from each other. The place of despair, the place of, again, not understanding, of impossibility. And yes, so we will we'll discuss it from both psychoanalytic view, relying on Todd McGowan, largely psychoanalytic take on the concept of a death drive, which he sees as he sees society as death-driven, not only individual human psyche, but also combining it with existential perspective, with Heidegger's, for example, being towards death, which I will try to see as a interpersonal phenomena. Unlike Heidegger, for Heidegger, it's something that has to do with more individualization. So I'll try to figure out how we can see society as based on negativity, on emptiness, connecting through emptiness, through death drive, something self-destructive, using psychoanalytic terms and existential terms.
Wow, thank you, Julie. That's fantastic. Look forward to that course, and your courses for GCAS that you've taught for many years now have been uniformly amazing and excellent. So thank you. It's good to be with you. I know you mentioned Todd McGowan, and Todd will be teaching a course on Hegel for us at our Summer Institute in Ireland in the beginning of June of next year. So thank you, Julie. Now we go from Cork, Ireland to Washington, D.C., where Daniel Tutt is joining us. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel. I'm very pleased to be with you all. Let's see. I have training in Lacanian psychoanalytic theory, although I'm not a clinician. I did my PhD with Alain Badiou, who is a philosopher, but also deeply informed by Lacan. And I am interested now in sort of peeling back the layers on the bigger questions that undergird the politics of psychoanalysis, as well as the ways that the various traditions and lineages of particularly Marxist and revolutionary political thought has intersected with psychoanalysis. It's not exclusive to Lacan or to French theory, but the course that I'm going to be offering in February is wanting to actually return to Freud and to ask some more basic questions, in fact, about what the revolutionary status is of Freud's thought. And to one of the things I feel is quite important from a position of pedagogy is, as a teacher, I think it's quite useful to not necessarily limit your teaching of key concepts, superego, death drive, etc., from the prism, although it's important, of course, to master it, of one particular point of view, let's say Lacanian view. Because I think actually we have a very rich prehistory that I want to dig into in this course, and to look at even ways that Marcuse, Horkheimer, Frankfurt School, Adorno, and even earlier socialist Freudians actually analyzed the teachings of Freud. One really important text that we're going to work with is Leon Rosichner's Freud and the Limits of Bourgeois Individualism, which is basically a fascinating approach to reading Freud in the same way that Lacan read Freud, but for the tradition of revolutionary socialism. And so I've always been interested in answering this kind of riddle as it pertains to whether Freud's teachings can be actually incorporated and used by emancipatory or liberatory political ends, or are Freud's teachings kind of liberal pessimistic at the end of the day? So the course is working off of the proposition that Freud does, in fact, contain a revolutionary core. But we need to identify new thinkers to unlock these treasures. So this is happening in February, and I'm very excited to be back with GCAS and with all of you.
Great. Thanks, Daniel. That's fantastic. And we're going to go from Washington, D.C. back to London, back across the pond to London, where we have Mary Wild, who's joining us this year. Welcome, Mary. It's good to see you.
Thank you so much, Kristen. It's nice to be here. I'm Mary. I'm the creator of the Projections lecture series at Freud Museum in London, applying psychoanalysis to film interpretation. I co-host the Projections podcast, contribute to the Evolution of Horror podcast, and post content also on my Patreon solo project. I want to start by talking about the usefulness of relying on the cinematic arts as a way to illustrate psychoanalytic ideas. Having taught psychoanalysis for over 10 years now, mostly to people who aren't experts in the school of thought, I consistently get the feedback that they gain a deeper understanding of concepts by watching examples of them in movies. cinema is a powerful educational tool. It makes learning fun and exciting, and spectators find enjoyment and feel empowered through psychoanalysis to approach films in an inquisitive way. The other factor that impacts my teaching is that our current culture can sometimes feel a little repressive. I regularly observe public outcries to boycott or cancel certain films or directors because they're judged to be toxic or problematic. Most recently, this happened with Andrew Dominik's film adaptation of Joyce Carol Oates's novel Blonde, which is a fictionalized account of Norma Jean Baker's artistic persona, Marilyn Monroe. My understanding is that courses teaching psychoanalysis are needed now more than ever, because as educators, we are interested in precisely the problematic dimension, which, the glitch, as Julie says, the thing that sticks in the throat and needs to be confronted and processed somehow. And this is why I love the horror genre, because it is a space that deliberately exhibits images that evoke the problematic, and we can figure out subjectively what that means for us by engaging with it. This leads me on to talk about my Woody Allen course, which I'm calling the Cinema of Neurosis. It's a 4-part course on Saturdays in January, which is also my first time teaching at GCAS. I'm very honored to do so. I wanted to focus on Allen because there are few artists out there who have represented psychoanalytic concepts as consistently as he has. He's the premier Freudian director, having spent several, decades undergoing analysis himself. And certainly, since the 1990s, and especially in recent times, his private life has been a controversial topic in the public discourse. There's been, media frenzy and a cultural cancellation. And of course, there are, impassioned responses on either side with divergent opinions about his moral integrity. However, his professional output remains objectively important to many cinephiles, including myself, and he's made a huge contribution to the popularization of psychoanalysis in mainstream culture. Therefore, it is my view that a dedicated space for interested parties to engage deeply and critically with his content is warranted. So the course I'll be teaching will present Woody Allen's work as the Cinema of Neurosis, featuring motifs such as existential angst, self-sabotage, obsessing over minor details, the compulsion to repeat negative life patterns, and resisting satisfying experiences.
Thank you, Mary. That sounds really great. And Woody Allen is, he's just been so important to me in my own intellectual development over many years. So thank you. That's going to be a really exciting course in January. Thanks, Mary.
Thanks.
Thanks. So to complete today's session, we wanted to bring in some folks who went through the program last year just to get their feedback, both positive and in ways that we can improve. And in that regard, we like to bring in Michael McAndrew, who is a practitioner of psychotherapy in Denver, Colorado. Michael, why don't you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your practice? And you're also going to be joining our PhD program here, which is really fantastic. Hi, Michael.
Hi. Yeah, that's right. So my name is Michael. I'm a Lacanian psychoanalyst in formation, a member of the Colorado Analytic Forum of the Lacanian Field, and a member of the School of the International Forums of the Lacanian Field. I split my time between working at a nonprofit that provides pro bono psychoanalysis for women who have recently lost children, infants, or fetuses, or anything in that area. We try to be pretty open about who we see. We being me, I'm the only employee, and a private practice, small private practice. One of the reasons I was attracted to GCAS was to take a seminar with Braha Edinger, who is amazing. And a colleague of mine had been telling me about her work for years, especially given what I do. And he was always like, you got to check her out. You got to check her out. And I was like, well, I'll get around to it eventually, the same way I am with a lot of things. I saw she was giving a seminar. I said, great, I'll take it. I emailed the day I saw it. I got an email back from Creston saying, actually, we're starting a certificate program. I said, well, okay, I can take a few more classes. I took classes with Dr. Jamieson Webster, Dr. Vanessa Sinclair, and Dr. Reshe. They were all very good. I appreciated that there was an option for asynchronous classes. Some of them were on the weekends, and I could have time to watch them at my own leisure. I also appreciated the emphasis on a clinical focus, which with analysts that I would not have the chance to work with normally. I'm entering, I've got the application actually pulled up and I'm finishing it, the GCAS PhD in Philosophy and Psychoanalysis program, in order to write about the past. The past, of course, being something Lacan invented to determine if a psychoanalysis has produced a psychoanalyst. That's about all I have to say.
Thanks for joining us today, Michael. I know you're really busy. Appreciate your time.
I'm happy to make time.
Great. And
thank you.
Absolutely. And we'll go a bit north of Denver now with another one of our graduates from the program, Simone. Simone is also a master's and PhD student with GCAS and is about to defend her master's thesis, which is really good. So Simone, why don't you join us and just briefly introduce yourself and talk about the program and what you're excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. So for some context in my work, I tend to be very focused on the relationship that philosophy and psychoanalysis have with the notion of love. So I'm here kind of approaching it from the notion that love is the last instance of psychoanalysis, but it's also the first instance of philosophy. I'm taking here very seriously a line that Alenka Zupanczyk mentions in one of her essays, where we're very concerned with that little glitch, as Julie has mentioned, the rock bottom of whatever constitutes us. And the interesting thing about that glitch, that fundamental abyss, is that at least the definition I take from love is the more later Lacanian one, where we find something fundamentally real in that love, and simultaneously that in dealing with that gap, we start dealing with the opening of a speculative thought altogether. So I think that there's a very interesting interconnection between philosophy and psychoanalysis there. So I'm very interested on love. I'm very interested on the contemporary issues of love. So I rely a lot on Hélène Badier's embrace of love there, and also deal with more contemporary issues around love. So dealing with dialectics between love and power. I cannot take on Martin Luther King and Byung-Chul Han there. So my work has greatly benefited from this program specifically. I started doing this because I really like the work that I've seen of Julie around. I really like Reshe Edinger. I've worked with her work for so long, and I was really curious to finally take a course on Hegel, because here my education was mostly analytic philosophy for my philosophy BA. So unfortunately, that really narrowed down the kinds of things that they count as thought, which I find is just unfortunate. And I think just to resonate with what with what Michael has said, there's definitely a benefit and compassion to oneself in doing the synchronous kind of work for this program, especially when we're dealing with a very I would put it in Lacanian terms, a university discourse of producing work academically, constantly, over and over. And one of the issues that comes with that is that it really, specifically for psychoanalytic interventions, it really saturates the space for any genuine intervention to happen. So being able to take the material in a slower pace or at the pace that works for you, I think it's greatly beneficial because at least, and this is one of the general problems I'm concerned with, we're dealing with an accelerating society that saturates the kind of space that we're dealing with. If I were to use Deleuzian Guattarian terms, I would say we're experiencing massive deterritorialization to speed up the flows of capital. So what I'm interested in are those negative spaces as points of resistance, but also what is happening with our capacity to take time and space, and why is it important for both philosophy and psychoanalysis? So just I've been astounded by all this work. I think doing the course with Todd McGowan, which now I help Creston and Todd teach, has been so influential for me, because now that's how I read Hegel. I cannot go back. Same thing with Julie, like the negative approach to psychoanalysis, that's what I adopted as my own approach to psychoanalysis unequivocally. So I find that this program is greatly beneficial for anyone who is looking to finally have access to something that gets you like deep in the midst of psychoanalysis and philosophy for that matter.
Thank you all for joining us. And we hope that you watching this will consider joining the program for this year. And we're excited about where the program is going. And we're going to be lodging our accreditation for a master's degree for this program, expanding it a bit for a one-year master's degree in psychoanalysis. So we're excited about the future, and we hope that you will join us. And thank you all very much. And thanks everyone for joining us today. Thanks.